Welcome to Off Panel.
Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel. I'm your host, David Harper, and returning to the show is the co-owner of Challengers Comics and Conversation, the Eisner-winning comic shop in Chicago. It's Patrick Brower. Thanks for coming on, Patrick.
Hey, David, my pleasure. I am actively trying to beat both Brandon Burpee and John Hendrick for a number of appearances on this show.
You are never going to beat Brandon, I have to admit.
No, I'm never going to. But I can still have goals.
I actually sent him a huge bribe. I sent him a Christmas present that he just got. That was we both appeared in Morning Glories, a comic from Nick Spencer and Joe Eisma. Mm-hmm. And I had the original page, and he just moved into a new place, and I sent him the original page as a Christmas present so he'd have something on his walls. And I'm pretty sure he will now do whatever I want forever.
Wow.
So
David, I saw that in your post about the original art that you own.
Oh, that I was sending it to him? Or you saw the piece?
Oh, just that you had it, yeah.
Yeah. We were a really buff military man. It's like the first time I felt like physically strong in my entire life.
I'm just trying to impress upon you that I do follow what you do.
Oh, thank you. Well, first off, I do want to say that I also follow what you do, and I just want to say congrats for becoming a Reddit and Bleeding Cool superstar this week.
Oh, man. I guess thanks.
I'm not. Was that on your New Year's resolutions list of things to do?
It really wasn't. You know, it's funny because the type of information that I put out this week that garnered all this attention is a thing that I do every first week of each year.
Yeah.
It's just that the numbers and statistics are different from what we normally put out, and it got a lot more attention.
Yeah. I do think that's interesting because I mean, I'm not trying to pretend like I'm some sort of hoity-toity insider or something like that, but you do this. Brian Hibbs has been doing this for forever.
Yeah, and honestly, we started doing it, our top 100 lists for singles and graphic novels because of Brian.
Right, yeah. I mean, who else does it? Phantom does it, I think. Big Bang
Joe
does
Field
it to a degree.
does it.
Joe Field does it.
The Dragon and Gulf does it.
I'm not trying to make you feel not special, but I am saying that, like, these things have been around. It is kind of interesting that people are kind of freaking out about it now.
And I'll be honest, we do it for our customer base and for the people that follow us. We don't not do it for the rest of the comics reading public, but we're doing it mainly to the people that are regulars here or who follow us to some extent. But we're not opposed to other people seeing the information.
Right. I was actually talking with my wife earlier about, like, because she has to listen to all of my inane theories about comic sales and things like that. And I was talking to her about it. I was just like, nobody really has a sell-through number. There's like no, like BookScan is supposedly working on it through POS systems and yada, yada, yada. But I was like, I feel like there'd be an interesting thing you could do by aggregating all of these lists by the people who do the top 100. Obviously, it wouldn't be the same because, like, certain shops are going to be selling way more copies of whatever, Black Panther number 17 than the other shops will be. But
sure.
I mean, it would be an interesting endeavor to do. I'm probably tasking myself to do it because I don't think anybody else would, but it is an interesting endeavor. But anyway, so the articles and the Reddit posts were about some news about, Challenger's year, about how you had done a tweet storm about 2017 for you guys. Obviously, that all exists and people might have seen it. But for the people who haven't, I'm kind of curious, like, what was the year like for your shop?
2017 was down 6.8% from 2016. Previously, in our almost 10-year history, it'll be our 10th anniversary in less than 3 months, every year has done better than the year before it. Maybe not leaps and bounds, but we've never had a down year. Mm-hmm. And we were early on in 2017, we knew, all right, things are trending downward. Things have been trending downward since, say, August of 2016. So we knew it was going to be down. And in my head, 6.8% I didn't think was that bad until I realized that 6.8% drop put us lower than we've been since 2014.
Wow.
So it goes, up to 2013, then 2017, then 2014, 2015, 2016. Mm-hmm. And like just 2016 was the year where I finally said, you know what? I'm not worried. I'm not worried about our continued success. I'm not worried about the store staying open. I feel comfortable. I'm not going to bed every night thinking, man, we got to have a really good Wednesday this week.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bottom drops out. So as soon as I got comfortable, everything changed. But yeah, 2017 was 6.8% down for us, which is new, but an adventure.
The thing that I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff from your tweet, so I'm going to cover all of that. But the thing that surprised me the most, as just kind of a pundit of sorts, is the last quarter was what really lagged for you guys. Like you described it, you said October and December were like the most down months.
They were awful.
And like the thing is like from a promotional standpoint, from a what they're pushing out standpoint, like you would think that those would be the big ones, because like December had like Doomsday Clock and like Metal was continuing, and then October like there was Legacy. Why were those the down months?
Well, I honestly don't know for sure, but it used to be traditionally Christmas sales used to start in comics retail the weekend of Thanksgiving, and it would last for the next 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
This year we got 6 days of Christmas sales.
And when you say that, what do you mean by that?
I mean sales that go up over your average weekly comic totals, people coming in to buy gifts for people.
Gotcha.
And it was only 6 days, which is very small. It's the last 3 years, it's always been about a week now, week and a half to a week of sales. People don't start coming into the store to buy gifts for other people until they start to get worried about shipping windows from online retailers.
Mm-hmm.
When they absolutely want to have the confidence of having an item in hand, they'll come to us in the last week.
Right.
And we also have had and still have some pretty crappy weather in Chicago right now. So, like, it started to snow on Christmas Eve, and that killed our Christmas Eve sales. Christmas Eve is usually a very strong day, and our Christmas Eve this year was a third of last year.
Wow.
And it usually doesn't matter the day of the week because, Christmas. It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, the first major snow of a season is a terrible sales day, and like that week is not great, as people seem to forget what it's like to function in snow.
Oh yeah.
So I like when December gives us snow early so people get used to it. Well, our first major snowfall was Christmas Eve, so that tanked everything, and now we're 20 degrees below average every day. Cars aren't starting, things are freezing over, and it's the start of January, so people aren't rushing out to spend that Christmas money that they would have gotten or redeem gift certificates or what have you.
Mm-hmm. I will say really quick that this is one of the few times in my life I can say sorry from Alaska because it's warmer here.
Well, I mean, that's why I can't complain about snowfall and things, because you live in Alaska.
No, you guys are killing us. I mean, honestly, we've been having very little snow, and it was like 50 degrees the other day. It's ridiculous. So global warming's not a myth. It's real, and it's here in Alaska. You guys are just getting the flip side down there. But anyways, sorry, continue.
No, I mean, that was I don't know why October was down. I mean, we participated in our first Halloween Comic Fest, and that clearly didn't have any huge effect. November was we call November flat because it was down like $200 from last year.
Right.
But we had a bunch of extra events in November of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that also could help. Also, I mean, December was kind of a late metal month. Metal 4 was at the very end, so we didn't have a full month. And while I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but our DC numbers were up about $2,000 from last year, which honestly, that's like a flat number to us. It's not that big of a jump,
right?
But it's solely due to Tom King, Batman as a character, Doomsday Clock, and Metal.
Right. Yeah.
If you take those away, DC's sales were pretty terrible as well.
That is, that's one of the fascinating things about everything that's going on. Is it seems like in some ways, comics retail, I mean, and again, this is just me as an outsider, but it feels like it's more top heavy than it's been in a long time. It's like, besides like certain things kind of carrying the torch, it's like it's kind of down everywhere.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I found out with the information that we posted was while I posted this on Twitter and our Facebook page, I also posted it to some private retailer groups on Facebook, and that had the most retailer back and forth, which is honestly what I wanted out of something like this, to see everybody else's statistics. And with one or two exceptions across the board, everybody's down.
Right.
Some people are down 12 to 15%, which is huge. Some people are up like 2 or 3%, which is amazing. That's great for them. The stores that are up the most are the ones that have a heavy gaming section,
right,
and account for gaming as what's saving them.
Right. I think the only one I've seen in the Twitter sphere and on the comics internet and whatnot that it was up was Ryan Higgins at Comics Conspiracy. And,
yeah, I saw his as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so just for clarification, both for listeners and for me, and this is again like Philistine talk. What causes a downturn like this in terms of your year? Like, is it a question of books just not selling? Is it a question of having just too much inventory on hand? Is it a combination of everything? Like, what drives all of this?
Well, it's interesting in that we have so much product coming out that there's almost too much product.
Yes.
And you would think that too much product wouldn't be a problem, but it is because the stores spread themselves too thin trying to carry everything. And we really, and I'm using this word wrong, but we curate the titles that we carry. Like, there's a lot of things we outright don't carry. And it's one thing to be able to tell somebody, oh, we don't have it, we can get it for you for next week. But half the people that come in looking for a book don't want that. They don't want to wait. And sometimes they'd rather just not get it than have to wait.
Yeah.
And us not having it means they just give up on it entirely. It's like when a comic store closes, there's a certain percentage of their clientele that just stops buying comics because this store is convenient. Now it's gone. Well, I guess I don't need to do this anymore.
Right.
It doesn't have the same demand that it used to have, where people are like, well, I want this thing, can I get it? So there is you know what, if I had to make a list, I'd say we carry less than half of everything that's available. But because there's so many small publishers and there's so many new publishers that have full lines of books and full superhero universes that they're trying to start, and there's just no room, we're cannibalizing the existing readers. And I will say that the people that are still buying are spending more money, but that's not what we need. We need more people spending less than we do less people spending more, because that's the quickest way to burn somebody out. And people who spend too much are more likely to quit than they are to pare down.
Yeah, and it makes you over reliant on a few, as opposed to being able to have X amount of pull customers who all have a few books, but they don't have those people who have a long box basically to themselves for a given month. Like I know my shop up here, I think they told me before, like I asked the question, like, am I the person who spends the most money? This was back when I bought a lot more comics, I'm not gonna lie. But they would say, like, there would be people who would come in and they would like have literally every single comic on pull.
Wow.
And like, I can't even imagine that. I'm like, how do you read all that?
David, I would honestly say, if you shopped here and you asked me that, even if you were the number one customer, I wouldn't say that. I'd say you're in the top 5.
Even if I wasn't?
No. If you were number one, I would never tell you you're number one.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't want you to feel weird about how much money you're spending all of a sudden, and I also want you to think that there's room to grow.
What if I wanted to feel special? You didn't want to tell me I'm number one?
Well, I like to think that I make you feel special just for shopping here. So you wouldn't need that verification. And I would say something like, you're number one in our hearts, David, but there's still 2 or 3 other guys who spend a little more than you.
That's good. No, but I do, like, that's one thing that I've talked about recently is like the volume of comics, and like how there's like a tipping point where it goes from being a good thing to being maybe a bad thing. And like there's an opportunity cost. And then there's like the situation where if you go to a shop and they don't have the book from Aftershock or from whomever that you're looking for, then maybe they go to a different shop and that shop becomes their shop now because they know that they can get this book there. And it's interesting how like the volume of comics creates a kind of network of issues when you would think that in a lot of ways, I mean, I do think that it's led to perhaps better comics, but it's also led to other problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's unavoidable, but there's always going to be more problems in comics retail.
I do want to say that you guys are the only shop I know that really, I mean, I'm pretty sure you had a signing for it, but Santa's Husband was in your top 20 GNs for the year.
Yeah, I don't remember where it clocked in specifically, but it's up there.
Yeah. I mean, like,
but
that's not a book many shops carry.
We literally had somebody come in right before Christmas saying that we were the 26th store they called looking for it. And that the store before us was Quimby's over on North Avenue. And Quimby's like, no, we don't, but try Challengers. And I'm like, the guy's like, do you have Santa Husband? I'm like, yeah, we got a bunch. He's like, wait, what? Like, yeah, we have a bunch. But it's true. We had a signing, and the author, Daniel Kibblesmith, used to shop here, and he's a very funny guy, and he writes for Stephen Colbert. And so it was on our radar because of that, but because of how high profile he was. Mm-hmm. However, that doesn't necessarily translate, because we've had other comics from other late night talk show writers, and just having that credit after your name doesn't give you an extra comic audience.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea that this person actually counted 26 times, all 26 times that they were calling.
That they called, yeah. Because it was they started calling bookstores, and then after they weren't getting like there, they tried comic stores. But David, if you need a copy of Santa's Husband, we have a bunch of signed copies left.
Well, excellent. Good to know. So I do want to ask, before we go down the darker path, perhaps, I want to ask, like, what worked for you guys in 2017? It sounds like, some of like the big names for DC, but what else was really working for you?
Well, what worked for us on more of a retail level was less signings and more events that didn't focus on a specific product. Like getting people into the store to celebrate a thing, like a Wonder Woman Day or Harley Quinn Day. Actually, Harley Quinn Day wasn't as popular as Batman Day was, but it's still, when we do experience events over product events, we have a better turnout and an overall better feel for what we're doing. The biggest thing far and away for us this year, and it's almost embarrassing, we had the Rickmobile here in June, on June 1st, and it gave us the biggest sales day we've ever had and probably ever will have. It was such a huge day that we can never even hope to reach that again.
What is the Rickmobile?
From Rick and Morty, the television show.
Oh, okay.
To promote the new season, they built a van that was basically a giant version of the Rick Sanchez character kneeling down, and it was a mobile store. It sold a bunch of Rick and Morty stuff, some exclusive, some not exclusive stuff, but they parked it in front of the store. We had about 2,000 people in line waiting to see it. And we stocked up on our Rick and Morty stuff from Oni, and we had Kyle Starks here for it.
Awesome.
But we could have sold 4 times the amount of Rick and Morty stuff we had because that's all people wanted. And we gave out thousands of coupons like, hey, you're here for this. Come back some other day and get a free comic. And virtually no one ever came back.
You did that at C2E2, didn't you? Before?
Yeah, that stuff never works for us.
Yeah. Well,
but we try it.
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't watch or read or do anything with Rick and Morty, but it seems more like religion at this point than anything else. Like the Szechuan sauce stuff was just insane to me. I'm a fan of things, but I guess I'm not that kind of fan.
Right, but I mean, I look at fandom now and think, who at this point in my life would I wait overnight to meet? And the answer is nobody, except you, David.
Okay, well, yeah, of course. I'm a huge celebrity. I
figured that goes without saying, but I said it anyway.
Amongst my wife and you, apparently, which is great. Okay.
So you're saying I have competition?
You do. You have very rigorous competition, and she is very tough.
Well, I'm gonna lose.
So the Rickmobile. So it's I like the idea, like the events thing. Like it seems like that's something some shops have had success with. Like I know Phantom Comics has done that. I saw on Facebook that you are bringing, like for 2018, you're bringing back your Chattingers.
Yeah, we used to do a book club. We called it Chattingers. We like branding everything with our name in some regard. And Chattingers used to be just a roundtable discussion where we'd pick a book, give a discount for it for the month, have people come in, we talk about it. But we had dwindling returns, like everything, but less and less people showing up. And by the end of it, it was like Dow and I and one or two other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we let it go. But we realized in talking to people, it's that putting it in that context is almost too much of an academic setting. So we're going to bring it back as like a mingling party. Like, hey, everybody who read this particular book, like, oh, The Damned Volume 1. If you read it, come hang out with other people who read it. Maybe you can talk about it in like individual conversations, but it's never going to be okay, what did you think about it? Now, what did you think about it? Now, what do you think about what he just said about him thinking about it?
Yeah.
All right, now, what do you think about what she said about it? It's not going to be like that, because we've had people say things like, I like going, but I don't like talking. Well, we always did well with the book for the month. Like, we sold a bunch of extra copies, but those people who bought it would never show up for the event. So maybe if we change what the event is, at this point, we'll already have made the money on the book. We're not expecting people to come and buy things that night of the book party. We're calling it like a book party kind of thing. But we want to get them used to coming back into the store more regularly.
I feel like, so as we were talking about before this, I was talking, we talked about how Alaska's having its first Comic-Con. It's having this Arctic Comic-Con thing. But we already have this like Senshi-Con thing, which is like an anime convention that was put on by these high schoolers and slowly but surely became this big thing that's now at like the biggest convention center in Alaska, or in Anchorage.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But the thing about it is like when you go to the event, I went to it for the first time this year, is it's like less about the things that are happening there, but it's more about having a bunch of people that are interested in the same thing as you in the same place, and not having really like a formal structure to it, more about just being around people who care about the same stuff as you. And it kind of sounds like that's kind of your new approach for the book club, is it's more like a decentralized thing rather than a centralized, formalized type book club.
Yeah, and honestly, that's what more and more Comic-Cons seem to be like. More like-minded people showing up to express their enjoyment and their love of a certain thing without actively engaging in it. Like the retailers we talk to that set up at shows now don't do as well as they used to, and they feel it's because there's so many more people who are just there to be there or to meet celebrities or whatever. And it's not our job to tell you how to engage with your fandom.
Right.
We can silently judge you for it, but it doesn't in any way change how you like what you like, and you're allowed to like it however you like it.
Right.
I've long been against people buying multiple copies of books, one to read and one to put away, like, because I don't treat these as collectibles. I treat these as things to read and enjoy and to share. And literally, whenever somebody's buying a graphic novel as a present for somebody, this is the thing I say to everybody. I'm like, look, before you give it to them, you should read it as well, because then you can talk to them about it, and that's part of the gift.
Yeah. It's having that bond.
Yeah, like to be able to say, oh yeah, what did you think about this? Here's what I liked. Or if somebody comes up and starts it and says, oh, I really like this part of this. We do that with movies all the time. Mm-hmm. Comic book movies especially. But there was a guy in today, Ashley Challenger was my coworker today, and she was going to see Jumanji right after work because she hasn't seen it yet. There was a guy who just come from seeing it, and she's like, oh, what'd you think? He's like, I don't want to tell you one way or the other. I don't want to influence what you think about it. But movies are such an easy way to relate to people and to talk to people about things.
Right. I will say, have you seen it?
Yes.
Surprisingly entertaining.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun.
It was great.
I didn't expect a lot out of it, but I highly recommend anybody who liked Jumanji check out the Graham Norton Show, which is a British chat show. They just had a recent episode where it was The Rock, Kevin Hart, and Jack Black on, as well as Jessica Chastain, Dawn French, and oh god, I just lost it, Rebel Wilson.
My god.
But anyway, the second half of the show, when the Jumanji guys get on, it's hilarious. Just the interaction between those guys is wonderful, and it's so much more and in a condensed format than you got in the movie.
I love the Graham Norton show, and
Ugh.
we DVR all of it, but like sometimes I only watch because it's on a lot. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we only watch the episodes that it's like you look at the couch and you're like, okay, this one seems like a great couch.
Yeah.
Like that one sounds like an amazing couch because those three are just so fun.
Oh yeah, it's great. I love the big red chair at the end.
Oh my God,
The thing
it's
that
so
I find
great.
annoying is BBC America airs them out of order from the way they're aired in the UK.
Really?
Yeah.
So is it?
I think it's because
are there continuity errors?
movies have different release dates,
Sure.
so I think they try to match when it is in which country more. But it's annoying that the Christmas episode just came out after Christmas here.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yeah.
It's the one with the whole Star Wars cast.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Yeah, I that show is so fun. Like that is like the perfect talk show for me.
I love how all of the American guests interrupt and interject and try to tell anecdotes in the middle of somebody else's story when all of the UK guests sit there quietly and wait until they're asked a question.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows what rude people we really are.
We're monsters.
We are.
All right, so to move away from the Graham Norton show, not that I don't want
Yes.
to talk about that forever because it is a fantastic show. We have to talk about the flip side, what didn't work this year. The headliner, of course, literal headliner because it was used for headlines on comic sites, was that Challengers was down 21,000 in single issue sales for Marvel alone. Another one of the things main things that I was talking to my wife about, and then some other people about today too, is like how the impact for something like that is a lot broader than just Marvel. Like, is the impact of that a lot broader than just the simple loss of sales? Like, are there previous Marvel fans just not showing up these days because of that?
Yeah, it's a long believed tenet of the comics retail industry is that where goes Marvel, there goes comics retail. When Marvel does great, everybody else does great. When Marvel does bad, everybody else does bad. And I'd like to point out that while we were down $21,000 in single issue Marvel sales, they were still our biggest category.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they still have it.
Mm-hmm.
It's I printed up a bunch of other statistics for this very recording, but they still came out on top. So that just shows you where everybody else is. And half of the discussion that we have internally about people not coming into the store and people not spending as much money is based off of, all right, why are comics losing people? The other half of this is that what we don't really talk about and what we don't have control over is people stopped coming in and spending money because of our political climate.
Yes.
And everybody is scared of the future. And most people I know now put aside a certain amount of money every month to donate to causes that they believe in and to organizations that no longer get the kind of funding they used to be getting a year ago or
Right.
a little over a year ago. So the people that would buy comics and have that disposable income seem to me, and this is just based off of my personal experience, the more socially conscious people who are willing to forego their forms of entertainment to help out other people.
Right.
I can only say this as a comics retailer in the city of Chicago because that's what I am. I'm not speaking for anybody else, nor would I ever try to say, well, here's why sales in Louisiana are what they are.
Right.
Because
And
I don't know.
Yeah. In Alaska, it might be because they're buying a new gun because that's what we do. Or
Oh goodness.
yay.
Oh goodness.
I will. That's. I was going to ask you about that because it's such an interesting thing. I mean, interesting in a like scientific study sort of way, not in a like this is actually good sort of way. But it's like when things like this happen, it's kind of hard. It's easy to say that it's because of X, or kind of X-Men because of Marvel. But at the same time, it's like there's societal issues going on. There's people who are concerned about the future. There's people who are concerned about, will I have money to spend on food next month, let alone comics? There's all kinds of things going on. Even beyond that, like you have Christmas, which is exacerbating that because people are spending more money on their family, on their friends, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, it's so hard to specifically attribute what the causes of issues for you guys are. Like one thing I was going to bring up is you also tweeted yesterday about how 94 subscribers did not come in at all during December for you guys, which is 31% of your subscribers. I mean, that's incredible. But I mean, like, do you have any insight into whether or not that's a comic related thing or a mass spectrum life sort of thing?
Well, the main thing that I didn't express in that information is that these people will come in. They just don't come in regularly. Mm-hmm. And even though it's a rule in our club, we want you to come in once a month, people violate that all the time. There are, this is a Dow quote, but there are more people than he can count on his fingers that will only come in when we call them to say, hey, you haven't been in a while.
Yeah.
And then when we call them, they come in. If we call them in 2 weeks, they'll be in 2 weeks. If we call them after 4 weeks, they'll come in after 4. If we wait 2 months, they'll come in after 2 months. Like, they don't come in until they're called, which is incredibly annoying, but they come in. So it's these people, they do come in. While we do have attrition from club every year, every month, everybody does. And our club rules are, we pull everything. We don't take a deposit. You get a 10% discount on the things you pre-order, but nothing pulled off the shelf.
Wait, really quick, because I'm an annoying American. Are you? So is club? Club is your like subscription, like your pool service?
Yes, sure,
okay.
Of course. No, that's that's another thing we need to realize is that we use a lot of inside terminology that the general public doesn't necessarily follow. So please, I'm glad you asked me that. So our subscription service, our subscribers, our club members, our pull list, everybody calls it different things. Customers come in and say, yeah, can I see what's in my folder? Can I see what's in my box?
Yeah.
It's all different terminology for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I literally forgot what I was saying.
Oh, you're talking about club and the 94 people and like what you have to call them.
Right. So yeah. So those are our rules. It's very simple. Come in once a month. We put the books aside. What we tell people is if we don't see you after 4 weeks, on the 5th week, we'll call you and email you and say, hey, we haven't seen you for a while. If you want, you can pay for your books over the phone. We'll keep them aside for you. Otherwise, if we don't hear from you in the next week, we'll put your books back out.
Right.
So that is a 6-week window. When we tell people, we give them 4. Mm-hmm. And we let that go 7, 8 weeks sometimes. Like if anybody ever has an issue or is on vacation or just says, hey, I'm going to be out of town, great, that's fine. We want communication. We don't ever want to feel like we're badgering you.
Right.
So after that time period, I can't tell you the number of times we put a person's books back out and they come in the next day.
Oh, man.
And it's like, look, you haven't been in 3 months. But what we do is when we put the books out, we keep a list of what they had on their file and say, here's what we had on the shelf for, like, here's what we had put aside for you if you want to go look for them on the shelf, but we're not going to go find them for you.
Mm-hmm. This is why I'm such a fan of you guys, because you guys go so above and beyond for your customers. I mean, like, I the funny thing is like you've been on the show several times. We've been emailing for forever. I'm just like a fan from afar. I love your guys' show.
Well, thanks, David. I appreciate that. One of the things that we do, and we looked into a year or so ago, switching over to Stu Colson's new retailer software called Comic Hub. Mm-hmm. And we ultimately didn't do it, but he has a lot of great functionality where you have more contact with your customers.
Sure.
So we've adapted that on our own. So every week, every Friday, if you're a subscriber at Challengers, you get an email that says, here's what we have set aside for you starting next Wednesday. Here's what you're getting from next week's books. And also here's a list of everything else coming out if you want to add anything else.
That is awesome.
Well, people only ever get to those emails when it's too late for us to do any major changes. Mm-hmm. Because people don't respond right away, or people respond months later. And when the new catalog is out, you'll get an email saying, hey, the new catalog is up on our website. Here's highlights. And then this link shows you everything else that's coming out. And then if there's a new book that has some sort of tie to another book, like if there's a new Star Wars book coming out, we'll email all Star Wars subscribers and say, hey, you get Star Wars. We want to let you know this book is also coming out. What do you think? Mm-hmm. So we go above and beyond to keep communication open. But you know this, I'm sure, in your line of work, that open rates or response rates are if you can get double digits, that's amazing. If you get 20% of your mailing list reading your newsletter, those are phenomenal numbers. And while these are individual people that specifically get these products and shop at your store, that doesn't mean they're going to look at their email,
Right.
or respond.
Especially because email has become pretty saturated. I mean, especially from the retail sense. But I mean, like, it's even getting to that point where like a lot of comic creators are doing it, and it's just like, God, how many email newsletters can I be on? I don't have enough time to like eat food if I'm going to be reading all these.
I feel the same way, and we get more and more image creators have access to the image mailing list, so they will send PDFs or whatever, and I appreciate it and I understand it, but there's not enough time to respond to all of them or to be able to give it the attention that you feel like the creator deserves.
Yeah. So going back to actually, first off, I want to ask one more question about the 94 subscribers. Like, so you guys do have a process. Like you reach out to these people and you feel fairly confident that these people aren't like ghosting you, basically.
Right. But just knowing how bad December was, how much better could December have been if these people actually came in to get the books that they wanted to get?
Right. I mean, 31% of your club list is no joke.
Yeah, agreed. And literally, how this process came about was we give out Christmas cards and occasionally give Christmas gifts to our subscribers. But if you don't come in December, you don't get your gift. So when we were taking all the cards and the gift notices out of the boxes, that is how many we had left over.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I want to, go back to like the overarching societal thing. Like you and Dal talk about this all the time, I'm sure. Do you have a good feel for if like part of this is like rejection of where comics are right now, or if like more of it's societal, or like, do you have a feel for that? Like, is there a kind of environment, mood, tenor of the customer base you have?
I feel like I have less of a grasp of that than ever before. I also feel that we're getting new customers every day. There were several, not several, but a couple of different people in today that were doing the whole, oh, how long have you been here? I've never seen this store before. Well, almost 10 years. 10 years? Are you kidding? But we get that a lot, which is great. We want new people in. It's because when we lose other people, and there may not be that many people that have been shopping with us for the full 10 years, because the people that were young when we opened are now 10 years older, and they got married. They have kids. And you can't devote as much time to your hobby when you have all those outside pressures. And ultimately, more and more people are starting families, and that is pulling them away. And that's understandable. I am not married. I don't have children. I say that Challengers is my child because it takes money and effort to run it. No, I wouldn't say anywhere near as much time and effort as it takes to raise a human being, but it does definitely keep me up at night, and it does have its temper tantrums, and it often wets itself. So I feel like there's a lot of similarities.
I do want to point out that you do have your employees, which I really appreciate that you call them like blank challengers or challenger, because like it makes you guys feel like the Incredibles to me, which I think is really fun.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, I want to make it so everybody is part of the group and part of the family.
Right.
And while there may be people that have shopped here for years and have never seen Samantha, well, maybe you don't come in on her day, Nobody has multiple days except for Dal and I. So if you only come in Thursdays, you're only going to see Kent. If you only come in Fridays, you may know Donovan and nobody else. But also, one of the reasons we call everyone Challenger for the last name is we don't necessarily want to put their last names out there, because the vast majority of our employees are women.
Oh.
And we don't want them getting unwanted attention through other formats. There have been numerous misconnection articles about our employees in the local readers, and things that I just think are unfair, and things that Dal and I never have to deal with.
Right.
So we even on social media, we don't tag them in things unless they say, no, it's fine, you can tag me. It's not like it's a secret, their last names or what they do, but I don't feel it's my position to say those things. It's their position to tell you if they want.
Sure. Yeah, that's so totally fair.
It's half for building a family and half for protecting a family.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So going back to Marvel, they're still number one for you guys, but I mean, 21,000 in single issue sales is a significant decrease. Where is that really coming from? Is that coming from like, like something like Legacy not hitting? Is it coming from just everything, or what is it?
Yeah, it's coming from people being unsatisfied with the output and don't feel like they're getting their value. Right. And honestly, Marvel is more expensive than most other publishers, or they're more akin to raising the price of the drop of a hat for a perceived added value, when a reprint of a comic from the 1960s is something that somebody would say, I'd rather not have in there and pay $1 less.
Yeah.
Given the option of doing that, it's just a massive exodus from their books. And every time something works or clicks, they change it immediately. And then there's no consistency. And it's a weird give and take, because we've got some people that only want to commit to miniseries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of more people that don't want miniseries and want to know if they're on this book, it's going to keep going.
Right.
And it's not going to change. But God, look at how many different artists so many of the Marvel books have had in such a short span of time. How many people have drawn X-Men Blue since it started, and they're only on, like issue 23 or whatever.
Yeah, that's not even including Astonishing, which is like rotating artists every issue.
Yeah, and I get that you want to do that for your high-profile crossover books, like your Secret Empires or even your Phoenix Resurrections. So you want to use what you call your A-list, but I don't think their A-list is who they think their A-list is anymore. And I don't think they really have a handle on art. And they've said repeatedly, artists don't move the needle anymore, which that's not true. It's just that their artists don't.
Well, I think their artists don't if you don't implement them correctly. And
yeah.
it's like my wife never reads comics, but she got into Mighty Thor because like she thought Jane Foster Thor was awesome, and she loves Thor, and she loved that Jane Foster was Thor, and so she was reading the second trade of the first Thor series that had Jane Foster in it. And she was so confused because there was like a reprint randomly in there, and it actually turned her off the book entirely, because she was like, "Why do they just throw this in there?" And I'm like, "I don't know," because they want to.
To make it a higher cover price.
Yeah, I mean, like it was so perplexing to her. And there was also the annual, which was a great issue, the one that had like CM Punk did part of it with Rob Guillory, and I think Noelle Stevenson wrote part of it, and having three different art styles randomly after Russell Dowderman was just like so jagged to her. And as somebody who's not used to comics, she was just like, no, I'm like, it was for somebody who's newer to comics, she was like totally out because of that. And it was a bummer, because like when I accept these things because I've been reading comics for my entire life, but when she like brings those things up to me, I'm like, I don't really have a good reason for why that is.
Yeah, and honestly, if you got into comics because of Saga, it's the same writer and artist for every issue.
Right.
Or for the most part, Walking Dead, it's the same thing. But yeah, you get into these books that ship twice a month, it's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, how good is Russell Dodgerman? He's one of the best in the business.
Oh my God. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't know. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I think that he is like Marvel's, like, if he's not drawing like the Avengers or events for them in the future, like I don't know. I mean, like, that guy, two things. First off, unbelievable talent, and him and Matt Wilson are incredible together. And second off, he's hitting his schedule. Like, he's on that book constantly, and I appreciate it. I think there's a reason why of all of the Marvel books that show up on like the end of year critics lists and things like that, the ones you kept seeing over and over were Mighty Thor and Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, because same creative team.
Yeah, and honestly, you can see a career path with artists like that for Marvel. When Russell started at Marvel, he was doing the Cyclops series that Greg Rucka was writing.
Right.
Immediately, Marvel's like, all right, this guy is too good for this book. This book is not selling. We got to give him something more high profile.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that career path. They've done it with Sara Pichelli. They've done it with David Marquez.
Mm-hmm.
You see slowly, like, all right, now this person will be drawing the major company crossover in 2 years.
Yeah.
But they don't have enough. Like, so they're good at fostering talent that they know is good, but they don't have a problem, it seems, just throwing anybody out there.
I do. I think a lot of it comes down to implementation, and I know a lot of this stuff comes to hitting schedules and making sure you're doing that. So sometimes fill-in artists are necessary, or like having interesting schedules. I'm saying interesting because that's a very nice word. But like I do feel like for me as a reader, part of the problem is like it's so unpredictable that it makes it a lot of their books not desirable, and that's why I kind of lean on the books that I find to be more predictable when it comes to creative teams.
Or if you're working with a writer that knows your schedule, like Jason Aaron can do a 2-issue Boar storyline just to be able to give Russell time to work on a bigger storyline that he's got coming up and to put more breathing room in. But also, when you have an artist with that talent, they know that and they don't try to rush that book out more than once a month.
Yeah, or you can just get James Herron, and I will never fight any James Herron. I love James Herron. Okay, so speaking of Saga, I did want to bring up, you mentioned in your tweet storm the Image was down, which I was a little surprised by to a certain degree. Like, what drove that downturn year to year?
Image doesn't have a success story anymore. They haven't had a big hit in a while. And this is, I need to say, I hope I don't need to say this, but I will say it. None of this is me talking about the quality of their books.
Right.
It's books not connecting with readers. And they haven't had a huge hit in a while. And even a book like Redlands, which we were as impressed with as we were with Saga when we got a PDF from Image for Saga years ago. And we pushed Redlands like crazy. And it started badly, but is slowly ticking up. People are coming around to it, and it's a great book, but it's a hard sell, and it shouldn't be because it's a good book. And Image hasn't had anything that's connected with their standard reader base in a while. And then when you have the books that used to do well, like Bitch Planet or Sex Criminals, that take forever to come out, that slows down the readership. And maybe this is a thing we did wrong, but when Bitch Planet Triple Feature came out, we sent an email to all Bitch Planet readers saying, hey, this is the book that's going to be coming out for the next couple months. Do you want it? We didn't automatically sign everybody up for it because it didn't have the same creators. We don't, if you're getting Amazing Spider-Man, chances are you're on it because you like the character. But if you're getting a specific creator-owned series, you like the creators. And if the creators change, we are not going to assume you want this because you don't know the new creators.
Right.
So we gave people the option of not getting it, or we didn't give the option of not getting it. We didn't automatically pull it.
Right.
And that made the numbers a third of what they used to be. I will say that we did a lot of graphic novel number breakdowns that we didn't put on the internet. Our Image graphic novels were down maybe $3,000 from 2016, so that's like nothing. No, I'm just going to say less than $3,000 for a year for Image trades, and we honestly thought it was going to be a lot higher than that because we're not seeing the big runs of books go anymore.
Yeah, and you did say that like still 12 of your 20 top-selling graphic novels or trades were Image ones.
Were Image books, yeah.
But they were probably Saga and Paper Girls and things of that sort.
They were mainly Saga and Paper Girls, but also Monstrous was number 2. Monstrous was number 2 for the year. Two of the things that surprised us the most were Black Science and Seven to Eternity. Those surprise us because neither Dal nor I read those books. And so we're not good at pushing them or selling them. So those books sold really well without us.
Wow. Yeah. Remender has a very passionate fan base, and his books seem to do really well in trade. Like I'm reading Seven to Eternity in trade myself.
Sure.
But did you look at Brian Hibbs's breakdown for this?
Yes, I did.
It was I was like, Monstrous does really well in book sales. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, us too. Honestly, I read the first issue of Monstrous and just never got around to reading the rest. But the people that read it love it. Which is great. Yeah,
it's a good book. I think Sana Takeda is just an absolutely phenomenal artist, and so I do think that was a book that was like seemingly like wavering a bit on schedule for me, and so I switched to trade too. And so like I think that you could see that there. It is interesting. I think Brian had kind of the same note about not having like the big hits in recent years. It's again not a qualitative statement. There's like so many good books, but it's just like I guess. You're waiting for the next Saga, more or less.
Yeah, which I mean, that comes along once every decade, maybe.
Right.
So it's foolish to wait for the next saga. But as an industry, we hope for it, we want it, we love it.
Right.
We need it to be there, and we like to be able to cultivate it. But I think the example I used was Angelic. Angelic was a book that we got a PDF of.
Good book.
We liked it a lot. Dow loved it. It's unique. It's fun. It's original. And we sold 17 copies of issue number 1, which not great, but honestly, that's more than a lot of image number 1 sell. But by issue number 3, we're down to 3 copies.
That's interesting. I'm always curious as to what causes that drop off. I mean, obviously, just lack of interest, but it's probably not even a qualitative thing. I think that one thing I've noticed amongst people that I know is that sometimes people sample like number 1s, and then they're like, "Yeah, I'll pick that up in trade."
And then they don't.
Oh, yeah, and then they don't.
Because they forget, or they're too busy looking ahead to the next thing they think they're going to pick up and trade.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, no, I think sampling is a big part of it. Nobody wants to miss the next big thing, but that means they're buying anything.
Right. Yeah.
And not following along, so they don't miss out. Yeah, we were happy to see that our image graphic novel numbers are as consistent as they were last year for the most part. Did I tell you that the big drop in graphic novels at DC, we were down 10 grand in DC trades over the last year to this year?
That's really, especially surprising to me, given the fact that Rebirth didn't even start releasing its trades until this year.
Well, part of it is that as soon as Rebirth starts releasing trades, the new 52 trades are dead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so it just effectively immediately kills that market. So
yeah.
It's like not it's not additive, it's like replacement.
Yeah, and we have all these on the shelf still. And then Vertigo graphic novels we weren't seeing people buying full runs of Why the Last Man or Sandman or Fables definitely, or Transmat. Like, we still have decent sales, but not anything like these things used to be. They used to have a lot longer legs to them.
That is, I never really thought about that, but it is kind of fascinating to think about how, like, New 52, like, all of that inventory is basically, like, I don't know, kind of just like this, like, middle ground that is, it's like in limbo. It's like, it's not really continuity worthwhile, and it doesn't have the same appeal as the previous stuff. It's kind of like this, like, I don't know, ugly, I don't know. It's just this lost stepchild in the background that will probably be ignored by most readers.
Yeah, this is the wrong way to describe it, but it's like those stories don't matter anymore, so people don't care. But whatever mattering is the enjoyment you get from reading a book. Yeah. But I guess there's a difference between wanting to own it and then wanting to have read it.
You brought up the miniseries earlier and how some readers really like them and some don't. Like, there was an interesting article yesterday on Paste about stealth minis and about how, like, that's like this thing that Marvel's done for forever, and and like now they're kind of maybe not doing them. And I thought the interesting thing about minis is I've always kind of thought that they didn't really work for retailers because of the perception that those don't matter. Like, they're miniseries, so they're just kind of like this thing that unless they're an event, they're not that important.
Or I always felt that people would just rather wait and get those in trade. Because, you're assuming a 5-issue collection, unless it's from Marvel, is going to be cheaper than the individual cover price. And then you have the whole thing in one, and you don't have to wait. So many of the new readers into comics today don't want to wait. They don't like the monthly idea of comics.
Right. Or, like, I mean, I'm like... I'm the horrible person who pretty much just doesn't buy Marvel trades anymore because Marvel Unlimited has so effectively replaced that product for me.
Sure. And honestly, like, storage is a huge deal.
Yeah, totally. I'm literally surrounded by comics right now. If you could see me, like, I have bookcase. I'm sure you are also surrounded because you're in your shop, but...
Yeah, I'm literally surrounded by, every side of me. But at home, I'm surrounded by not only comics, but comic iconography or memorabilia.
I have a Luna Lovegood staring at me because I am also a Harry Potter fan, but that's like comics adjacent, I feel.
Yeah, sure.
I want to bring up one of the weird things to me, the most surprising thing from your tweet storm was that you were down 15% in graphic novel and trade sales. which, I mean, it kind of seems like people keep saying things like it's the future, it's like it's everything, yada yada yada, but that's nearly 10% more than your overall drop. What was that?
Oh man, I have no idea.
You really?
I mean, there were as many good trades out this year as there have been.
Right.
I feel like the first 5 or 6 holidays we were open, the holiday season we could point to, this is the bestseller, this is the thing you want to get. And the last couple of years there hasn't been a one thing to point to.
No headliner.
Yeah, one great item. So that may be part of it, but that's only end of year sales, really. I don't, especially because it seems like new comic readers like reading collections or graphic novels more than single issues by far. Mm-hmm. So, and also trades make up a large majority of our sales because they cost so much more than comics.
Mm-hmm.
And we dedicate way more floor space to them and we don't have more of them because they're thicker and harder to classify by size. But I honestly don't know what the major trade drop was. If I knew, we'd prepare for it more.
Right. Do you think that a part of it came from like the Christmas sales being down, like a significant chunk? Just because I imagine a lot of the not incidental, like the people who are holiday shopping aren't really looking for single issues. They're largely looking for collections.
Yeah, definitely. Collections are definitely the main thing that sell at Christmas, and now more toys, but that's because we're carrying more toys and action figures and things. But yeah, for sure. I mean, the Christmas buying season being down for us can attribute to a lot of what's happening.
Mm-hmm. So this might be hard to say, but I mean, were there, because you haven't had a lot of distance from 2017 yet, but were there any trends like either like positive or negative that you started noticing in terms of, like what's working and what isn't, or like what's going on with shoppers besides down? Besides down.
Yeah, my trend is less people coming in. Let me ask you a question, and it maybe help us both answer this last one. But this is a theory that somebody has proposed, and I had not considered it before. But do you feel that now that comic culture is such in the mainstream, and that there's so many comic book TV shows, so many comic book movies, so many cartoons, how the proliferation of the iconography is everywhere you go? There's every clothing store you go to, they have superhero T-shirts, and not just bat symbols, but everything, deep
Green
cuts,
Lantern.
Yeah, like all sorts of stuff. Do you think that people are now overexposed to the comic material, that it's not special anymore, and maybe they just get enough of it in the movies?
No. I mean, partially yes, partially no. Like the weird thing is like I feel like the people, if that was I feel like a lot of the downturn for people is that like a lot of the people who used to buy a lot are now buying less. And I don't think that is necessarily because of like they can watch, I don't know, Thor Ragnarok in theaters or something like that. Especially given the fact that there's more and more of those, and those continue to be successful besides Justice League. But I mean, it's just like those movies still make a lot of money, and like they've gotten to a point where there's articles about like saturation problems, and like Jodie Foster saying that superhero movies are like the bane of her existence and stuff like that.
If I may comment, because I just saw that this morning for the first time.
Sure.
In the last couple of weeks, I saw I, Tanya. I saw Molly's Game. Oh man, I'm blanking. But I'll see Thor. I'll see Justice League. I'll see Lady Bird.
Did you see Lady Bird?
I did. I liked it.
It was great.
Oh man, we're getting way off topic, but my favorite part of that movie is after they perform the school play.
Yeah.
And we're backstage in the with everybody after the fact, and the teacher who was the director of the play.
Yeah.
Just looks at the camera with this blank look on his face and says, "They didn't get it." Oh man, I love that so much.
That was a good part.
But granted, I have Movie Pass, so it's beneficial to me to see more movies.
Yeah.
But so I disagree with her assessment. I think you can have both.
Right.
And to bring that back to what I had just asked you, I would like to think that the over-proliferation, the proliferation of comic book culture in main society, that doesn't account for things like Saga or Paper Girls, because there aren't things like that. I mean, you can equate Stranger Things to Paper Girls, but only thematically, not or stylistically, not content-wise.
Right.
So that just, I mean, it's the things that really get people coming back more and more are not those things. Like, Doomsday Clock sells really well. Is that because there's a TV show or a movie? No.
Yeah, no. I honestly think that I mean, if comics still didn't have a poll or anything like that, I feel like you wouldn't have lift from things like Walking Dead, because like people come in to buy. I mean, maybe it's less now because the show is less popular, but at the same time, like for a long time, like I would go into my local shop and like people would be coming in just because they want to get the Walking Dead because they want more Walking Dead, or like, you know, Deadpool because more Deadpool, or like, I mean, even Suicide Squad was a fairly big seller in the book market last year because the movie was bad. Like people wanted to see it despite, or wanted to read more about it despite the fact that it was terrible. Anyways,
we can't sell Suicide Squad comics. We can't even sell Deadpool comics, but we can sell everything else Deadpool.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. And I do think though that like to a certain degree there is an additive element about it, but I don't think it's replacing it for everybody. I do think there's a saturation problem, but I think the problem is like that's a societal issue, and it's not just nerd stuff. It's everything. Like, I mean, look at sports. Like everything that's going on with football. Like the ratings are down for obviously a complicated cadre of reasons, but I think part of it is just like it's exhausting. There's just like the conversation about it is so perpetual. It's just like you kind of loathe the sport because it's just so like inescapable.
That's true. However, I watched more football this year than in any years previous.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's the way my schedule works out. I like football because I can watch it and do other things and turn my brain off and just have it. And I mean, also, Dal is a big Chicago Bears fan. Poor guy.
Yeah.
But he likes watching things. He'll record games and then watch them fast forward, and that's a fun way to watch it because you're not stuck watching a game for 3.5 hours. You can get a full game in like an hour. Yeah,
that actually the timing thing is one of my main issues for football these days, is just because like you sit down to watch a game and I'm like, man, where did that 3.5 hours go? Yet I'm watching probably more NBA than ever, so who knows? But I mean, I do think that there is something to be said about like just a general exhaustion with everything that's going on, that it's kind of hard to get excited about anything, let alone like, I mean, like look where we're at in 2017 from an objective comic book standpoint. I honestly think you could say that we have better comics than ever. Yet, like
ever before, hands down, than ever before.
Yeah, but you look at the conversation about it, and it's just so fatalistic. It's to the point where it's like it's like we almost have a difficult time stepping back and saying, "Wow, we're really lucky right now," despite the fact that there's a lot of bad stuff in there too. And it's really fascinating. Like there's a chasm between like where we're at objectively and where we're at from a conversation standpoint. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if it's streaming culture or binge culture that we now have access to everything immediately, and comics don't necessarily fill that void unless you're willing to spend X amount of money to buy all 8 Saga trades at one time. But that's significantly more expensive than your $12.99 Netflix subscription or what have you. I assume you're getting the high-end Netflix one. That's why it's $12.99. So, yeah, it's definitely a point of value or perceived value.
Mm-hmm.
And whether people are finding that it's worth their money.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's like I remember when I did my retailer poll a few years ago for Sketched, and like I asked like for like what do you view as like the biggest competition for you? And like I was stunned. Like I never even thought of this as a possibility, but the number one answer was Netflix. Like the competition for like entertainment time. It's like time is the most valuable resource we have at this point, and it's so split that it's like it's almost like that's more important than the cost element to it to a degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, well, so it sounds like do you have like any sense as to whether or not your customers feel like a saturation issue, like that they can get their entertainment from Thor Ragnarok or they can get it from The Gifted or whatever?
No, I think those people just don't come back to the store. The people that are still coming regularly clearly come back because they find value in the product and they want it to be a part of their lives still. But that's always a question when people say, well, do you know why when people stop shopping with you? Is it because of digital? And I just have to say, I don't know why they stopped shopping with us. They stopped shopping with me. They didn't tell me. They just stopped coming in.
They don't leave a card behind as to why they're not coming back.
Yeah. So it's you have to assume for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, the people that come in still find it. It's just a matter of people that fell out of it because they think comics aren't for them. It's the industry has to get them back. But there's a level of marketing, and forgive me if this is a thing that we've talked about before or other people have talked about before. When publishers put out new product, all they're doing is saying, hey retailers, here's this new book, and putting it out. They're not trying to reach new readers.
Right.
And they're leaving it to people like Rainbow Rowell to say to her fans, hey, I'm writing Runaways. It's a comic book. Go to a comic store. This is how you get a comic book. And this is how they come out. They say, read them. Magdalene Visaggio also did a very interesting Twitter storm about books coming out and how they're read and how they're engaged with, because new fans don't necessarily know that. So it's up to the publishers to not just try to get more money out of the same people. We all need to get new fans. If they can get people coming into a store, Black Panther was such an amazing product to get people who've never been to a comic store before to come in and to say, hey, I hear that Ta-Nehisi Coates is writing a book. What is that about? And that's for us to say, oh man, welcome to the world of comics. So, we're the gateway, but we need the publishers to help get people in the store. And God, I said this for years, there should just be generic comics commercials along the lines of Got Milk or Pork, the other white meat.
Yeah.
Like, not just promote the medium of, find celebrities that read comics regularly and we'll talk about it and say, hey, this is a thing that I do. Maybe there's value in it for you. And then we can get them the rest of the way. Right. But we can't get people to come into the store who have no idea what comics are. We need help in that regard.
Yeah. I've written about this a lot, and I'm pretty sure I talked about this with Ivan Brandon, my most recent podcast as of this recording. And it's that the interesting thing about the New 52, I think the most successful thing about the New 52 and why it's such a immense moment in the history of comics wasn't even that the New 52 was good. Nor could I even necessarily say that the New 52 was good. It was that they put so much money into marketing it in all these different places that they don't normally get. And because it was such an incredible story, like DC's rebooting their universe, that they got all this earned media from every media outlet there was, that it brought a ton of people into comic shops that they wouldn't get otherwise. And it's you would think that one of the takeaways from that was that maybe we should try to push that, push comics in a different place in a different way than we normally do. But instead, it's still kind of the same thing as it always was.
Yeah, I understand. I guess Marvel had some Marvel Legacy one-shot ads that went up some places. And I know DC had some commercials they made for the first round of Rebirth trades. But nobody came in here saying that they saw a commercial for it and they wanted to get it.
This is the first time I've even heard of those.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you're familiar with, I don't know if do you have Me TV anywhere near where you are?
No. We're Alaska. We just got PBS. Okay. Have you got PBS yet? It's pretty good.
I do like it. Me TV is a commercial, is a station that just does classic television like Batman or Andy Griffith or Dick Van Dyke.
Sure.
So they would advertise on those shows during the Batman TV show, which makes sense. I get it, but I
mean, kind of.
Yeah. We need more.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Me TV is the way to getting the masses in. But all right, so to finish off, I want to ask about 2017's over. That's all bye. 2018 is here. I'm sure you and Dal are busy. you guys are too busy to really do anything drastically different. But is there anything that you guys are looking at from 2017 and like saying like we can do this differently to make 2018 different? Is there anything you guys are looking to implement besides like the Challenger's return?
Yeah, honestly, it's all in the level of Challengers. We are actively working on a series of recurring events in the store that all have a different theme, but they're all club based.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be, and these are not what they are, but like an anime club or a cosplayer club, things like that to get people meeting in the space on a regular basis. I hesitate to say any of what they really are because we're just talking about, basically we open this discussion with everybody who has worked here or is working here. We reached back to employees past and said, throw out an idea of a thing that you'd like to see, but also a thing you're willing to help us run.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things we stay away from because we're not experts. Dal and I aren't gamers. So we don't like to carry gaming because we're not authoritative enough to be able to say, oh, you should play this game or this is how it works. That's why we stick to comics because that's what we know.
Right.
But if we can get other people who are as passionate about as these other things to work with us for these events. So yes, we are literally looking to establish a lot of more club or event type of things in the next year, and all reoccurring, and have several of them every month.
Mm-hmm. And basically just in hopes of bringing in foot traffic, bringing in interest, and trying to yeah,
exactly. And getting people used to coming into the store on a regular basis, even if they don't buy something every time. Hopefully they buy something at some point, and also to feel more of an ownership to the store.
Sure. I mean, it I think that a big part of what makes, I'm a lifer. I've been going to the same comic shop since I was a child, literally. And I think part of the reason why I keep coming back is because it's there's a familiarity there. There's a comfort level there. And it's I think that the newer generation doesn't necessarily have that same feel, especially given the fact that comic shops, present company excluded, aren't always inclusive to the types of new readers that there are. And I do think that doing things like what you're talking about is important because it starts building that familiarity that may be present with somebody like me, but may not be present with somebody like, I don't know, a new reader who's just jumped on because of Monstrous.
Yeah, if somebody can come and say, oh, this is what a comic store is like? Oh my gosh, I want to be part of this. Yeah. That's what we're looking for.
These are my people.
That's what we hope for. We want to find more of us because we know whoever you are, whatever you do, there's a comic you're going to love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We need to be able to find it for you, but you need to come in willing to try it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a great place to leave. There is more good comics than ever, and there's certainly and the other thing, actually, I'm going to totally ruin my ending. The thing about comics that I think is really amazing is there's more comics for more types of people than ever. It's I can, I'm part of the reason why I think Bone was such a massive hit, besides the fact it is the best, was the fact that it was one of the first comics that I really think I could hand anyone and they would
anybody
enjoy.
Yeah
and I feel like there's all kinds of books for any type of person. I could give my wife a Asterios polyp because she's an architect and it actually speaks to her people. That didn't exist before, but thankfully
right.
David Mazzucchelli dedicated his life to making an amazing comic.
Agreed. I'm super excited for Tilly Walden's I Love This Part graphic novel that comes out in March. Her graphic novel Spinning was my favorite graphic novel of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And by graphic novel, I mean standalone story.
I'm a monster. I haven't read it yet.
Oh, you're not a monster. That's fine. But I mean, not like volume 1 or of something, but just a standalone thing. Spinning is excellent. I look forward to this new book. That is the thing I'm most excited for in the first quarter of this year. But what I'm most excited for, David, since you asked, was or are the comics that don't even exist yet.
Yeah. Well, I think that's they'll always. Sometimes I think about writing 2018, stuff I'm most excited for is just quite this year. The stuff that I enjoyed the most, a lot of it just came out of nowhere. I didn't have any expectations for loving Extremity by Daniel Warren Johnson, but then it appeared and it was just this comic is amazing. The books that I'm excited, I'm really excited for The Prince and the Dressmaker from Jen Wang because I love Jen Wang.
Oh yeah. Oh man. I don't want to. I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I got an advanced copy of that. It's so good.
Oh God, I'm really excited for it. It's gonna be great. And like I really like Box Brown's story or comics that he does where he tells the history of stuff. Like he did the Andre the Giant one and he did the Tetris one, which I particularly loved. And he's doing Andy Warhol this year, and I'm really hyped for that. Apparently, I just really want to hype up First
Hey,
Second.
David, I already got a copy of that too. It's good.
You know what? I hate you. You're out. My wife is the winner. You're out. Yeah, First Second, man. I love First Second. Like that's
First Second is great with the galleys. When you show them that you support their work and say, "Hey, can I get a copy of that book?" They're like, "Yeah, sure," because they're like a book publisher. Their graphic novels are done a year in advance of publication.
Yeah.
So they have them. They have galleys.
So are you working with Gina Gagliano?
Yes.
God,
yes.
she's the best.
We love Gina.
She's the best.
First of all, Gina makes me feel like I'm terrible at my job because she can name books I've never heard of, graphic novels and creators I've never heard of. Second of all, she always gives me a massive list of things I need to catch up on. Mm-hmm. And third of all, she knows everybody.
Yeah, she's so good.
Yeah, Gina's the best.
Yeah, I have to admit, like sometimes I had Heidi McDonald on my show a little while back. And like having conversations with people like her or Gina, I'm just like, I feel like such a Philistine when it comes to comics because I'm like, I really like the X-Men, and they're like, have you read
I'm way older than Gina, and she makes me feel like she's been in this industry so much longer.
Yeah. Well,
in a good way, in a very good way.
They're wizards, but yeah, there are a lot of really great comics. I'm looking forward to you selling many more of them in 2018, Patrick.
Hey, me too, David.
Thank you for coming on. I always appreciate you taking the time. I'm sorry you will never pass Brandon, but you are number one in my heart. You're definitely top 5 overall, though.
Never say never.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with comic shop owner Patrick Brower. You can find his shop, Challengers Comics and Conversation, on Twitter at @Challengers, on Facebook at /Challengers Comics, and on their website at challengerscomics.com, as well as in their Eisner-winning shop in Chicago. If you're a fan of the show, there's some big news. Off Panel now has a Patreon. If you like the show and want to support it, consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. There are fun rewards and insider information you can get if you do. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Andrew Scott, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Benjamin Birdie, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Abraham Reisman, Adrian Diaz, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Michael Perlman, Phil Nile, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Dan Lee, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Christopher Carter, Nicholas Keslick, Brian Dickerson, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfield, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /Sketch, that's SKTCHD. Follow on Twitter at @SketchComic, or follow me at @SliceFriedGold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.